Hello everyone, it's Kon Kakanis from Sundata. Welcome back to our series of Simplifying IT. We have an objective to talk about IT challenges at a business level, just to help with our clients' understanding of the challenges, not just at a technical level, but also in a business context. So today we're talking about subject of backup and some interesting connections that it's got to the challenges of today. And I'm very pleased to welcome our guest, Alan Warminton, who's a Senior Executive for Cloud and Service Providers at Veeam in Australia. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me too, Con. I'm really excited to be having these kinds of discussions with your target audience, your customers. So I'm delighted to be here.
That's great. Could I just ask you to expand on your role first, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So at Veeam, we have a couple of really interesting parts to our channel and the way we go to market. Veeam is a 100% channel organisation, so always servicing through our partner community. One very significant part of that partner community is we call them our Veeam Cloud and Service Providers, typically MSPs, cloud hosting providers, those sorts of organisations that really build above and beyond just the software or just the hardware, right? So it's usually SLA or outcome based, and I manage that part of the portfolio for Veeam, which roughly 40% of Veeam's overall revenue comes via a service provider. That's in Australia and New Zealand. So a really good portion of the market is serviced by our service provider community.
Excellent, thank you. Now, our goal today for our audience is about 15 minutes. So I've got some questions to pose, and Alan and I can discuss each one. And hopefully you'll get something out of it. And certainly we'd love your feedback or your questions to reach out to either of us after this recording. So, Alan, tying two things together, cybersecurity, cybercrime is in the headlines every single day. What's the connection between something as mature as backup and recovery that we've all been dealing with since day dot? What's the connection between that and cybercrime?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, so first and foremost, I don't profess to be a cybersecurity expert. And we in sort of the data protection backup business probably don't profess to be either. But I think there's a very important element or tie-in from, prevention of intrusion or threat protection at the front end. And I kind of look at data protection or backup specifically as kind of what happens at the back end, right? That's kind of my two ways of looking at it. So I want to protect the front door, but if something gets in, what's my ability to recover from an incident? And my perspective on that is I believe that our backups should be considered as, at the very least, a very important part of our insurance policy, but they're probably a whole lot more than that. And ensuring that we have that level of trust and recoverability, access to backups in case, we don't want them to be compromised either. So there's certainly a lot of connection here. And, ransomware is the big one, Con. We're hearing a lot around ransomware every other day. We actually put surveys out around this, particularly around ransomware, and had some survey responses done on how many people have rang our support team because they've had ransomware. So we know that it's coming up and it's prevalent. What we want to feel comfortable with is that we're providing customers with a solution that, in the case of, right, or something does come through the front door, that we have the ability to recover and access their data effectively.
Yeah, it's funny. I know the word backup's been around for 100 years or 50 years, but in some respects, if it was called data recovery software instead of backup software, that actually encapsulates the promise that it makes a lot better. We've certainly, as a service provider, have seen our share of clients being hit by ransomware. And to date, none that we're aware of have paid a ransom. In every case, we've been able to get to the backups and build a recovery and get the client back online without having to learn all about cryptocurrency the hard way. So,
yeah, I mean, that's not how I'd want to learn about it either. That's a phenomenal stat, by the way. I mean, you've got clients that have experienced issues. You've been able to resolve the issues. Testament probably to yourselves and your business and your expertise. And hopefully it's a testament to the tools that you use and employ. Whether they're Veeam or something else. But
I'll declare right now that we use Veeam for our backup as a service that we offer to our clients. And in the case of the most recent ransomware attack, all of the client's data was on our cloud, our private cloud at NextDC in Brisbane. And we were able to run the recoveries and rebuild the client's environment and get them up and running without them having to go down the ransom path. So it's a trusted solution from our point of view. Now, Alan, your role, you're obviously very au fait with cloud-based services. I know that backup in the cloud is a big deal, but I have seen through our experience and our clients' experience, there are some traps. So I know one thing that we speak about is the uptake of Office 365 and the assumption that people make about backup. Can you make some observations on particularly 365 backup and what's there and what's not?
Yeah, I can, and I won't go into the the terms and conditions and the EULA and those sorts of bits and pieces, because that's not the intent. So I think our natural disposition as consumers is, once I move to a cloud-based service that is otherwise seemingly all-encompassing, that everything's great. And for the most part, it is. It's not a problem. We use Office 365 or M365 ourselves, and you'll find the service availability is phenomenal on these kinds of tools, right? So that part of it's not a problem. It's probably not so much around service resiliency. It's actually what's in the service. So what resides in the service, and that's the bit that's not often well discussed or necessarily well understood. It's the data in any service is still your responsibility. You're a consumer of the service, but it's your data that's in the service. So it's definitely worth it's more than a point of consideration. I think it's a point of contention, particularly as we go and, we're finding budgets to make the move to SaaS-based applications or SaaS services. We're finding budget for that, and then suddenly says, oh, you've got to back it up as well. It's sometimes a little bit confronting, but it's definitely worth the investigation on what that means to your organization, for those tuning in. But the big push obviously came during last year, where, everyone starts working from home. Extremely rapid adoption of, collaboration tools, M365 being, a huge adoption of that. And so now you've got more and more data stored on those services. We're recording our meetings, we're flicking files around on SharePoint. It's become more and more of a point of consideration. So, yeah, definitely worth the investigation on what it means to your organization. But if I was to pick one particular area at the moment where we're seeing the most growth, Kon, it's on backup for Office 365, both as a service or customers just choosing to grab the product and do their own thing. But it's the number one growth category for us at the moment. So it's not just us saying it, I think is the point.
Okay. Yeah, I know. And we've seen clients move to cloud services for a long time now. So it's a mature business, but I still find that there's an expectation when people move to a cloud service that it's the Rolls-Royce service by default, i.e. in the case of 365, that everything is backed up forever. And it's just purely and simply the case if you go down and check the list of inclusions and exclusions, things like archive of disabled accounts, for example. No, it's not forever. So if you actually want to keep the history of your 365 activity for an employee that's left, something like backup for 365 from Veeam completes the service that most people are expecting is coming out of the box. And that's probably the thing that we've seen the most of.
I think so. Just the last thing on that is probably also just the ease of use or the access, right? If you've misplaced or deleted or otherwise can't find a piece of data, it's how quick can I get it, not just can I get it. And that's always the second part too. It's the ease of use or the how quick, right? And that's often the availability gap is, I know it's protected. It almost goes back to what you were saying before about recovery of data, not just backing up the data. It's how time to recover, time to get back and productive again, right? So these are all, I think, really important considerations for organizations. Yeah.
Well, on that subject, one thing that we talk to clients a lot about from a resilience point of view is testing recovery. So a lot of people will happily look at you and say, yeah, no, my backups run great, I'm really happy. And you say, well, when was the last time you tested a part or full recovery? And they can't remember. So can I maybe ask you a question about what can people do to improve resilience in terms of leveraging their backup solutions?
I think it's a fun one, by the way. Some organizations do a phenomenal job of ensuring that they've got a really, really stringent test regime. And that's phenomenal. I don't know how difficult it is to create policy inside an organization to make sure these things get done, because often the testing of things is just the last it just gets deprioritized when there's other projects or other IT projects that sort of get in the way. So I kind of get it. Seeing that little green tick saying, yes, that has been backed up, or there's been a successful backup taken place, it's fine. It makes you feel good. But you do want to take the time to test these things. And that probably not just all the way from testing a DR plan, even just down to, can I even just recover a single file? You know, I trust that it's backed up. And then, you know, we bake this stuff into our product, but I don't want this to be just about us. But baking in is that sure backup, sure replication are things that are baked into our technology you can take advantage of. But I still think I'd like to make sure that I'm running fairly regular tests. And if that's something that's beyond the, you know, capability or capacity just with bandwidth or whatever else for organizations, that's really where you go to an MSP or an organization to go and run those tests for you, and do trials, because I think it's worth the money, honestly, to make sure you got it.
Yeah, look, we probably about half our clients run backups on premise, and the other half use our service. And I guess the difference would be that the ones using it as a service are relaxed in that they know it's contracted to be done, as opposed to depending on somebody internally who's sometimes too busy to run a recovery test. The other thing, it's a famous quote from one of our clients who said, you know, a recovery plan that's not tested is not worth the red binder that it's printed in, you know. So it's great to have the binder, but if you haven't run a test and you don't know what the results of the test are, you effectively don't have a DR plan that you can depend on. Or if it works, it's as much luck as it is good management. So
Look, it's one of those old things too. You know, we think about archiving out to tape and those sorts of things, and tape's highly resilient as well. May not always be convenient for people, but there's certainly, you know, it's one thing to know that there's a tape that has data on it, but it's like, have you put it in? Have you checked it? And they're all just the things I'd like. If it was up to me, if I knew that there was someone who was contracted to deliver an outcome and provide some level of reporting or monthly reporting or quarterly reporting on, you know, success and failures, that makes me feel a little bit better, right? Knowing that you guys are doing that, or my MSP is doing that. Yep.
Well, it's just scheduled into the job system. There's a weekly or monthly ticket that says test object recovery, and then once every 3 months you might test a big recover a VM or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. I'm conscious of time, so one more question for you, Alan, and this is your chance for the infomercial. So, like, we use Veeam internally and for our services that we provide. So we eat the dog food. Give us a snapshot of, you know, independent proof that Veeam is a leader in this space of on-premise or cloud-provided backup services.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. I probably won't, you know, do the market share stuff. I think we're at a pretty critical point from a market share perspective, and I'll let people do the digging around on Gartner and those things to look at that themselves. I think I'll start at the service provider, because that's really core to my heart. It's the business I manage. So 40% of our, and I mentioned up top, 40% of our overall revenue out of ANZ comes via a service provider. So we have a lot of Veeam-powered, Veeam-enabled service providers delivering what I consider to be trusted backup and DR solutions in market. And that's going very, very well. It's continuing to grow. We have, I believe, and I think we didn't quite do the digging on the numbers, but somewhere near 1 million users protected in ANZ on O365, somewhere near that. Just in our partner community, just our VCSP community, we're probably adding somewhere around the 5,000 users per month, just on a VCSP or as a service type model. And then, you know, 5x that again, or whatever on you know, subscription licensing as well. So certainly from an O365 perspective, huge growth, huge success. I think we're doing a phenomenal job there. And we're adding somewhere near around 250 to thereabouts anyway, logos per quarter, and that is new customers trying Veeam for the first time, or buying into our product for the first time. And that's not necessarily through a service provider. That is new logos that are coming to Veeam for the first time, but just via a resell model. So I would say that people are voting with their feet on that. And, you know, it's an opportunity. I think during COVID, there was a little bit of that, where people were prioritizing projects that had maybe been left behind a little bit, particularly in our service providers. They couldn't necessarily access, you know, customer environments. It was kind of like, hey, let's work on our own systems. And Veeam really did experience some great growth during that time as well. So I'd say do your own research. My number one thing is Veeam's not a backup company. Veeam is a recoverability company, right? It's all about the recovery. And for what you just said before, I think there's a number of vendors that will do backup very, very well. Some will do recovery better than others, and they're the ones you want to be looking for, right?
Yeah. All right, I'm very conscious of time. I really appreciate the insights that you've given us today and shared. Again, to our viewers, feedback, comments, questions, we welcome it all. Engage with myself directly at Sundata or Alan or your Veeam contacts. If you want to investigate further, there's a lot in this space. In some ways, this whole backup and recovery space has been re-energized in the last probably 2 or 3 years with the dramatic increase in cybercrime, and there's a direct connection. So hopefully you got something out of our session this afternoon or today, and I look forward to you joining us on our next instalment of Simplifying IT. Thanks very much. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Con.